Good day and welcome. You're listening to the Eyes Open Network, and today's date is October 30th, 2015. And today's topic is the U.S. backing off of its hard line against Syrian President Bashar al-Assad and his future as leader. I was reading a couple of reports about this topic and about the growing ridiculousness in Syria. But I found it interesting. There's sort of three stages of the U.S. stance in Syria. Number one, Assad has to go. We're going in there, getting rid of him. Well, we aren't going in there. We're going to support the rebels, or support some moderate terrorists, or support whatever. They're dumping money and guns and all kinds of stuff into Syria so that we can get rid of Assad. That was stage one. Stage two, Russia getting involved, things are getting a little heated. Okay, so where there's no definite timeline to when Assad's going to be gone. And now, today there's a big meeting, and as of last week, John, pardon me, Kerry was looking to, they're looking to sign a deal that will leave him in power for a number of months while they do some transition. I want to go over some of the highlights of this Wall Street Journal article that I think that you should read if you have any interest in what's going on here. But some of the highlights are and I'm just going to read some of them just so that it makes it a little bit smoother. But the Obama administration entered a crucial round of international talks in Syria's war, prepared to accept a deal that leaves President Bashar al-Assad in place for several months or more during the transition to a new government. See, that's a huge backslide from your original stance, right? Original stance was he's gone. Now it's, so who's flexing whose muscle over there, right? The U.S. shift on the dictator's future caps months of backtracking on the most significant obstacle in the resolution of the Syrian conflict. While U.S. officials once argued Mr. Assad couldn't take part in the political transition, they have gradually eased that stance, eventually signaling he wouldn't have to step down immediately. Now they are planning to negotiate the question of his future in talks being held today, or Friday in Vienna, which is today. What? It's the flip-flopping. We sit here and you guys have a U.S. election happening soon, and we give everybody a hard time about their flip-flopping on stances and whatever. And I mean, this is just major flip-flopping. The White House hasn't publicly set a time frame for Mr. Assad's departure to give U.S. negotiators room to maneuver in the Vienna talks. Well, let me tell you, that does not sound like the U.S. has much say or control in what's going to happen today in these talks. What's further, ultimately what I'm thinking about before I go on with what's in the Wall Street Journal here is Assad's departure is likely dependent exactly on when Moscow decides. Moscow decides Assad's done, then he's done. Until then, he's not done, no matter what the U.S. has to say. So let's get back to the Wall Street Journal. In advance of negotiations, administration officials discussed a resolution of U.S. allies, including Turkey, that would allow Mr. Assad to remain in place after a ceasefire in the 4.5-year conflict. The resolution the U.S. is seeking would include a ceasefire and would not prejudge the Assad question, a senior administration official said. It's just getting it's almost like you don't backtrack to this extent unless you're being almost bullied to do so. The approach reflects new realities imposed in Syria by Russia and Iran, which have intensified military options to bolster Mr. Assad. It also follows recent challenges faced by the American-led fighting against Islamic State. Russia and Iran are taking part in Friday's conference, along with Mr. Assad's Arab adversaries. In all, the meeting brings together more than a dozen European and Middle Eastern foreign ministers. The inclusion of Iran represents a change after the U.S. and Saudi Arabia blocked Tehran's participation previously. Russia and Iran have demanded Mr. Assad retain power. Demanded. that's in the Wall Street Journal, quoted out, demanded Assad retain power. Americans' Arab allies are demanding a clear timeline for when Assad would step down. Okay, so that sounds a lot like a stalemate to me. We got Russia and Iran saying he stays in power, and then you got the Arab allies to America demanding, I want a clear timeline when he's gone. Well, that doesn't sound like either one of you are going to get what you want. Well, the way that it's looking, it looks like Russia and Iran are going to get what they want. But here it is. The bottom line is, say whatever you want, have your own opinion. But here's a reality for you. Washington are demanding that the West be able to dictate who runs a sovereign country, while Moscow and Tehran are insisting that it isn't up to the West. Really? So, but okay, so we have by the simple fact that the U.S. is only fighting proxies, and Russia and Iran are involved directly, Washington has no bargaining power. Right, so there's really at a real difficult standoff because the U.S. have no bargaining chips. They have nothing to work with because they're not on the ground in there technically. They're fighting through proxy. Further, the Wall Street Journal states that Secretary of State John Kerry, who arrived in Vienna on Thursday, intensified discussions in recent weeks with Mr. Assad's biggest opponents, including Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Qatar, to try to gain their support for diplomatic resolution that would allow the Syrian dictator to stay in power during transition. These officials had said, the U.S. wields limited influence on the battlefield, because they're fighting through proxy, making it critical for Washington to persuade these three countries and others to join the effort because the power they exercise over the rebel groups and they support. So these rebel groups that they support are better known as Sunni extremists, who the White House wants us to believe are varying degrees of moderate rebels, moderate terrorists. That's who these Sunni extremists are, right? This is out of control. I'm telling you. Like, so and. Lastly, from the Wall Street Journal, the U.S. diplomacy is placing the Arab states and Turkey in a bind, as many of them have provided significant arms and funding to the largely Sunni rebel forces seeking to overthrow Assad. Saudi Arabia, in particular, has particularly criticized Russia's military intervention in Syria, arguing it could strengthen Assad and the Shiite dominated Iran, his closest Middle East ally. So, the most critical question is whether the U.S. is about to lose control of all of its friends in the region, right? We want to ask that question. Are they about to lose friends in that entire region? They're not making any friends over in China, but in this specific case here, and what I mean by that is that Washington's once again poking in with this Shiite Sunni divide and it's really dangerous to be playing around in there. And it could even force them to choose sides, which is going to get ugly because you have the ousters of Assad on one side, you have the people wanting him to stay in power on the other side, and Washington's kind of got their hands dirty on both sides of that puzzle. So it's a crazy situation going on there. I encourage you to watch that or read the Wall Street Journal article, and I encourage you to take a closer look at what's going on in the Middle East. Try and put all the different pieces of the puzzle together so that you can have a clear understanding of what's going on. Thank you for listening. Thanks for coming by. What are your thoughts of going on in the Middle East and the change in stance from the U.S. on Assad? Leave some comments below. Let's get the conversation started. Let's get people's eyes open. Take care, guys. Have yourself an awesome day.